In this next portion of our lecture, we're going to look at Roman numeral 3, which is FOIL backwards, and that's what I call FOIL backwards, and I'm even writing it backwards to be silly. This is something that I do, but usually not in the book. It's FOIL backwards if, first of all, there's no greatest common factor, you've gone through all the 5 special formulas, and you've got some term x squared plus bx plus c, but the coefficient of x squared must be 1. In this case, the nice thing is there is no guesswork. The polynomials, if they factor, they will factor as 2 binomials. First thing to do is to determine what the signs are going to be in the middle of the terms for those binomials. So if we start out with 1x squared plus some number bx plus some number c, that's going to factor as x plus something times x plus something. What we find out for those something is going to be the factors of c that multiply to give us those numbers. If it's 1x squared minus bx but ends in plus c, the signs are going to be the same, x minus some number times x minus some number. Now in this case, since both of these signs are either both positive or both negative, we want to look for factors of this constant where we can add them together and get this middle term bx. That's what we're looking for. In the case where it's 1x squared minus bx plus c, that's going to factor as one of each. Whether the plus comes first or minus is up to you. If it's x squared plus bx minus c, that's going to factor as one of each. And in this case, we're looking for factors of c that not add but subtract to give us the middle term bx. So no guesswork involved at all. And one of the things we're going to have to do, though, is we're going to have to take this constant and we're going to have to list all the possible ways of factoring c. Not a factor tree, but listing all the possible ways of factoring it. That's key to this portion of the lesson. All right, so let's look at an example. There's no greatest common factor. That's Roman numeral 1 in our lesson. Roman numeral 2, it's not one of the 5 special formulas. So therefore, we're Roman numeral 3, FOIL backwards. And in this case, we know that the signs are plus then minus in the order. We're going to end up with one of each. Since this is a coefficient of 1x squared, it's going to be x times x. So what we need to do is look at all the possible ways of factoring our constant 15. Could be 1 and 15, could be 3 and 5. Since these signs are not the same, we want factors of 15 that subtract to give us this middle term 2. Obviously 1 and 15 don't do it. 3 and 5 will subtract to give us the 2. So we're going to use the 3 and the 5. The question is, do we put the 3 in front of the plus or in front of the minus? To answer that, we'll look at the 2x. It's a positive 2x. So in that case, we have to put the larger number with the plus sign if we want to get positive. So since that middle term is positive, we place the larger of those two factors in front of our factor term with the addition sign and the smaller with the subtraction sign. And x squared plus 2x minus 15 factors is x plus 5 times x minus 3. If you want to check to see your answer is correct, you could FOIL them back together just to see if you get x squared plus 2x minus 15. Let's look at another example. And we've got 3 minus 2z minus z squared. Sometimes the book will have us factor it just the way it is. And sometimes we'll turn it around. So let's actually factor it, try to factor it the way it is first, and then we'll turn it around and see what happens. In this case, we're going to end up with 2 binomials. If we list, well, let's start with a coefficient of 1 here. Z squared can only be z times z. Since we're doing it backwards, z will be in the last position. The signs are going to be one of each, but I'm going to put that in last because 3 can only be factored as 3 times 1. Now, we want a negative 2z. So when we check the outsides and the insides to multiply together, we want to end up with a negative. And the 3 needs to be the negative, so that needs to be negative 3z. And then we need to have plus 1z if we want to get the negative 2z from the outside and inside. So let's FOIL it real quick to check to make sure we have it correct. 3 times 1 is 3. Outside is negative 3z. Inside is plus 1z. That gives me negative 2z. And last is negative z squared. So that's one way to factor it. 3 plus z, 1 minus z. Another way is to rewrite it and turn it around. So negative z squared minus 2z plus 3. In which case, we're going to want to factor out a negative 1, so we'll have positive z squared. So that's negative z squared divided by negative 1 is z squared. Negative 2z divided by negative 1 is positive 2z. And 3 divided by negative 1 is negative 3. Then, this is z squared plus 2z minus 3. Don't forget the negative 1 we factored out. But that's going to factor as z plus something times z minus something. List all the ways of factoring 3. Well, that's a small list, just 1 times 3. We want positive 2z, because that's our middle term. So therefore, since the middle term is positive, we put the larger of these two integers, 1 and 3, with the addition sign, and the smaller with the minus sign. And again, don't lose that negative 1 that we factored out. So that's negative 1 times z plus 3 times z minus 1. And that is the exact same answer. It means the exact same thing as when we factored it backwards, as when we factored it forward, and factored out the negative 1. Alright, let's do another one. We can start factoring this. We know there's no greatest common factor, no special formula. Since it's minus then plus, we know it's going to factor as x minus something times x minus something. We need to list all the possible ways of factoring 36. Not the smallest of lists, but that could be 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, or 6 times 6. We want factors that add to give us the middle term, negative 20. And in that case, as we look, don't worry about the fact that it's a negative 20. We're taking care of the signs. We took care of the signs first. So we just need to look to see which ones will add to give us 20. Obviously, the 2 and the 18 are the winners. So that's going to factor as x minus 2 times x minus 18. Let's just quickly FOIL it in our heads to make sure. First, x times x is x squared. Outside is negative 18x. Inside is negative 2x. That's negative 20x. And last, negative 2 times negative 18 is positive 36. All right, we're going to hold off on FOIL backwards and keep trial and error for a future lesson.